So can you share, also tell us more about your hackathon experience, like what your projects were and how has it been participating in hackathons and what are your learnings from them?
Okay, so this is a project that I worked on, I believe, in 2017 summer. This was spectacle. I worked on it at AngelHack in New Delhi, and this ended up winning the grand prize at the hackathon. And my role in the team was, again, like predominantly the user interface, all of the flows, kind of like animations and visuals and stuff like that. So I guess I can talk about what. So also the team, it was 3 people: me, my friend Abhishek, and my friend Rohan. And this went on like a traditional hackathon for like 24 hours, just like overnight. So the challenge here was, well, it was pretty open ended in the sense that it was up to us like what we wanted to work on. So we decided to work on like, well, initially we started talking about like learning disabilities, but I thought that we thought like that was really, if you think about it, like learning disabilities is like a really broad topic. So we kind of want to like narrow that down and like really focus on like specific target user, I guess. So we focused on learning disabilities or like communication as part of what comes with children that have autism. I know there's like a lot of different levels of autism and like there's a lot of complications. So it's not just focused on that, like that target group, I guess. But at the core, we ended up going with like how children with learning or communication disabilities or like differences would be able to interact with their parents or like their loved ones or their family, I guess. So that's kind of what we were going off of. And so I started off, so disclaimer, full disclosure, this is like done in 2017. So the details of this project are like really fuzzy. And if I were to change, there would be a lot that I would. So yeah, I started off with what the interaction or I guess experience would be for the child itself. So in this context, we're just assuming like this child has like a caretaker at home or not. I guess like they do, but like at the time they don't. But what it's like for them to communicate with them while they're gone, or like how they would express their feelings about like what they're feeling, if there's something they want, or if there's something that they're experiencing. So started off with like some sketches and kind of really diving into what. So okay, this is also again like I think I would have, if this were not like a hackathon project, I would really have dived into like with a non-binary approach. And when I say that, that means like really exploring what options you have, a lot of iterations that you would do. But at a hackathon, you kind of have this like time crunch and like this constraint where you just like, for this one, I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is what it looks like on paper. And then I started like making it on Figma. So I just have like this one iteration. But like you said, if I were to like do this over again, like I would probably do like a lot of iterations. But I think just for the sake of hackathons, it seems like that's okay. Like that's not a wrong thing to do. So if you see like I really just jumped from like the lo-fi to like really going into the hi-fi mock-ups for that. So I kind of mocked up what it would look like for the child here. This kind of system asks them how they slept, if they would like to contact their parents, like their mom or their dad. And then it kind of really, so we, as part of like the Eng team, like I was working with 2 developers, they were like crazy, like they like crazy in the good way, like they really knew what they were doing. So we also implemented this thing where the system could have like facial recognition stuff, so it could really kind of tell if the person was like sad or like angry or like they're just feeling groggy or whatever. So it kind of detects like how you're feeling, and then based on that it lets you also kind of express if you want to talk, if you want to play, feelings. So you can see it also has this option of like, hey, I want to eat food. So that was kind of like the system that I worked on. So that was one side of that. The other side of this was kind of for parents and also for like doctors, because if you have like, based on kind of like the brief research we did at the hackathon, we figured one of the bigger problems that doctors face when they're kind of treating someone with autism is to understand what really the state of mind of the child has been over time, not just when they're kind of like there in the clinic or like the hospital, or like even if it's like at a home. So one of the things we focused on for this project was how the child has been over time and what the timeline is like. So I worked on this dashboard that was for parents and for their like doctors or caretakers, for them to be like, hey, this is how the child has been over this week, and what that tells about how the treatment works or stuff like that. So this was kind of like the second side of things. This was like a web-based dashboard for doctors and for parents. So that was the second thing. And finally, kind of really going into what the branding was like, I guess what the design language was like. So just explaining, hey, these are the typefaces I used. These are some of the colors. You'll see I use the same format for pretty much all my case studies. And then here's the logo, here's the word mark. These are the ways you can use it. And then finally, again, like I said in the last example of the case study, kind of talking about what the outcome was. I just like to wrap up my stuff with like photos and stuff like that. So that's me with the winning team. Well, I'm the winning team, but like that's me with my partners, and just talking about, hey, this hackathon won the grand prize at this project won the grand prize at this hackathon. And then we were also invited for this Hackcelerator program that AngelHack has, that they do in the Bay Area here, but that came on later. So just talking about like, hey, this is what the future is like for this project. And again, like then finally wrap it up with like what the demo was. I guess when you share my portfolio, they'll be able to like watch what the actual product demo was. But this was again one of the projects that didn't necessarily die at the hackathon. Like, sure, I did not kind of work on it with the same team, but when I got to college, I was part of this thing called DFA, which is Design for America, and I was kind of like leading. I was leading a team of like 4 people that were also super passionate about what it's like for children, not necessarily with like communication problems, but like what life is for children with disabilities or like autism. So I remember we talked about like what are some of the challenges they face, and I ended up working on this like backpack thing for kids that would help them feel like secure and like kind of hugged, I guess, because it was like a weighted backpack. So that was a project I worked on, completely different from like this one, but I guess the idea or like thing really stems from my like motivation to work on this initial project. So what I'm trying to say is like, don't think of projects, or especially like hackathon projects, that they would just die out at the hackathon. Like you could always still draw inspiration from that, and you don't necessarily need to work on like the exact same thing. Like I know it's a time crunch, it's only 24 hours, but if you feel like your product isn't what you really wanted it to be, but your vision is still like something that you believe in, like you could still pursue it, and you could still talk to other people that might be interested in that, and kind of set like a team up and work on it. So I ended up working on the backpack thing in college, and we presented it at like a design studio called Artifact in Seattle, and people like really enjoyed it. So yeah, that was so this is the reason I think I'm really big on like hackathons, or I was when I was like really starting out, because like I think it gives you like this opportunity to build stuff, and at the same time I think it's a great way to kind of learn how to work with, like I said before, people that are not designers. Like you'll run into a lot of stuff that you have no idea, or like you've never done before, like as they call it in the industry, or like the developer handoff, like when you're handing off your like final mocks and stuff like that, what goes into that process. It's sure like it's different at a hackathon because you're probably with like friends or like people that you work with, but it still kind of like sets you up for what's next when you like start working. So I think that really helped me working with like developers, like engineers and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's great, man. Like the learning curve from hackathon seems like it's a lot in terms of
It
not
it
just,
it
yeah,
definitely is, yeah, definitely is. But I think it's a great way to start. As I said, it definitely has this constraint to it, but it's a good constraint. Like because once you're there, you have to build a thing. Like you're not gonna go to a hackathon and just walk out and be like, yo, I did not do anything. I mean, you could, I guess, if you wanted to, but like you wouldn't do that. So I think it's a great way to kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone too. and not necessarily going in with like this thing of like, hey, I want to, here's what I'm going to do. Like hackathons are a great way to learn stuff from other people. Like when I started going to hackathons, I had no idea about like what writing code was, like what it meant to design or like, I guess, develop for like iOS, or like how it was different from like web dev stuff. And I'm no master right now, but I'm just more aware of what the technical constraints are for developers and like engineers. So when I work in like, when I was at Facebook, and even when I was at An Academy, I kind of, some of those constraints like still carry on to that stage too, because it's essentially the same people. Like you're working in the same space or domain, as you might call it. So it's not just that you're going to learn how to work with them, but you're also going to understand what their shortcomings are, what, like what, how can you like prevent like edge cases and like stuff like that. So I think it's a great way, it's a great segue to going from just hackathons to like actually working in the industry, or like whatever level you're at. Could be a startup, could be a big tech company. You're essentially working with the same kind of people. Yeah.
Nice.